Hey, this is just a little message from Letitia of The Brood. The first 20 or so minutes of this podcast, there's occasionally some hiccuping where a few syllables are left out of the recording. This does go away, and everything's still understandable, but it's just a little bit irritating sometimes in the beginning. I'd say the first 20 minutes and the discussion of the 70s Cronenberg gets a little distorted occasionally, but it is still all there, and the conversation gets really interesting and is really interesting. So I'd encourage you to keep up, and sorry about that. We're going to fix that next time. Thanks. Tonight we're going to talk about David Cronenberg, the director.
Yay!
And he's our podcast namesake. And a director that I think we all enjoy and are interested in.
For sure.
Yeah, I think he's a favorite, but also somebody that has a lot of there's a lot of issues to talk about when you get work. A lot of things to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we're going to do this, we're going to just go logically straight through his career, from the beginning to more current films, and talk about that kind of big decade chunks, which happens to work pretty well with him. I think there's some pretty clear changes in his interests and changes in filmmaking. I think the 90s is probably the most mixed bag decade, the most going on that both calls back and then signals to what's going to happen later, but Ashley will take care of that. Okay, so how about Josh? Do you want to take the 70s and sort of some of your thoughts about the overall themes we see and some issues used to be already chewing on even in these early films?
Yeah, I think so. So for this, I watched Crimes of the Future for the first time, which is one of Cronenberg's early films, not a Hollywood or not a Canadian Hollywood movie, but Super 8 and like all the sound overdubbed after the fact, really kind of really low budget. But
how did you find that?
On YouTube, of course.
Oh, okay. Just check. I gotta check it out.
But I mean, it was, and it's not really enjoyable either. But it does involve a protagonist kind of walking through a weird modern city, the House of Skin, which is this clinic that deal with people who have had their skin permanently damaged by cosmetics, and venereal disease that makes bodily organs suddenly appear and be replaced. And it kind of ends with a cultish kind of group of people that like pedophiles. Basically, the only reason I'm spending any time in a movie is that basically, I think, gives you all materials for the next 40 years.
Yeah,
that's it's all kind of all right there. From there, he makes some of my favorite films. Kind of three films in a row. The first two are kind of a pair, and so we can probably talk about him that way. And that's Shivers and Rabid. Both of them involve this concept of the socially transmitted diseases as metaphor. But I don't know. I love Shivers as a film. Just to summarize, we have a high-rise apartment that seems to be the locus of a disease spreading that. We've got weird little slug creatures that basically it's an excuse to do away with personality, to let that repressed id out. It does in fact come out in multiple bizarre and problematic ways. Certainly the body horror is already there, in terms of just opens with the most disturbing and fascinating of the people checking out the apartment house. They're gonna
yeah.
Well, another man who turns out is a scientist is busy kind of raping, murdering a girl in a pretty extreme scene.
It's pretty brutal. I'm always surprised by that opening. It's so effective and awful and very brutal. Yeah.
Her wardrobe in that scene is so unsettling every time.
Yeah.
Like I forget time, and I'm always appalled and terrified. because it's essentially schoolgirl uniform.
Yeah.
But it seems like the plot says later that it's not, that she's a resident.
That sounds right.
Yeah, well, and apparently she's kind of pass around the building.
Yeah.
It's like I said in Crime that really does revolve around this plot point of pedophilia. One of the things coming up for me as we made our way through these is the way that just continues to surface in these movies and in interviews. It's really unsettling to me, and I can't quite decide if Cronenberg that as kind of a test case. What will stand? Like that's kind of like his mistest for whether we're really willing to put up art. But it's I don't know. It's definitely troubling, and the way that it pops up time and again, it's only questionable. And I mean, that opening scene, it's just troubling. That opening scene is pretty emblematic of just really the way that Cronenberg works on you. It's so kind of like reportage. There's no. It's just kind of it's there. The side by side kind of projection there of events that just so cold, and I don't know, but. The thing that I love about Rose Rabbit is that they are grindhouse films. They're this really kind of artistic sensibility and some big ideas underneath. They're fun as hell.
And funny. Well, Shivers is funny. It has funny moments, even though it's awful. Which I don't think is a Cronenberg thing. He has it. I saw an interview where he talked about how he has a humor, and I don't think that's true, really.
You know what? I'm actually going to disagree with you. But I thought about particularly moments seem to be actor moments, like especially in the 80s, Jeff Goldblum and Jeremy Irons have these very sort of dry delivery moments that are really funny. I mean, they're really funny. Well, and I guess I also think, his sort of big role in the Clive Barker movie, of which I can't remember, and I thought he was really very funny.
Yes, is that a breed? Yeah, he's so good.
Cronenberg,
Cronenberg is.
Yeah,
I mean,
great.
so I think that Cronenberg, like, I maybe I project to my personality when I listen to him because I feel like he's just interested in all sorts of creative, and he finds weird things funny. That he might find his films sort of hilarious, be putting jokes in there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
But I think
I'm
that's
sure funny to him.
He's like, this is hilarious, you guys. I can see that happening. But I think that, when he has those film 80s that focused on, that have actorly, like Goldblum is just a personality. He can't not be funny. He can't not be interesting to look at. But Shivers at the moment, I don't know why it makes me laugh so hard, but when the guy puts the slug onto the umbrella. I don't know.
It's funny.
That
the old
kills
ladies,
me.
yeah.
And they're all
so
like,
great.
oh! But it's also a strange moment. Like, I don't totally understand why it's there. It's really funny.
Well, the frame, people being so anxious to get in complex, this building, is itself, it's funny, but it's not, ha-ha funny. There is definitely something mocking. Again, it's mean funny.
I think they can be funny. I love the characters in these movies. Trying to remember the one guy's name who plays the scientist one, and he's in Rabbit as well. But Cronenberg does have a way of finding just actors with great faces, great voices. I mean, I think he is an actor's director. I think that he, anybody who can get somebody to just even go through what he's asking people to do. But yeah, I think that the reason that I love the 70s so much is because we have a low budget actor or a low budget director who wants to make science fiction films, but couldn't make a straight science fiction film if he had to, and I just love everything about it, just their limitations and the way that we see that when we get to The Brood, which is my probably all-time favorite, where we see that finally kind of come full circle. But I really like these early movies, and I like their I don't know, I love the big cars, and I love the Canadian landscapes and everything about them, and they're just so in both of them, by the time you get to the third reel, it just becomes this, it is almost funny, this just bizarre kind of zombie that's actually like pre Dawn of the Dead, I mean, I definitely think that like Rabbit especially feels very kind of ahead of the game in terms of the all the kind of broad society kind of comments that are happening in there, which aren't as interesting as most of the other stuff.
I'm kind of curious because I actually Rabbit is not the first Cronenberg film I ever saw, but the second, and I was pretty young. I think it was on Cinemax or something, and it was sort of thrilling in its grindhousiness. And I didn't see Brood until I was probably in my early 20s, and why is it your favorite? Let me ask you that.
Brood. The Brood cranks up the problematic nature by like to 11. I think does with it is just brilliant. I love it. Feels like the place where the body actually has a real kind of plot-driven reason be. I love the way it kind of is emblematic of what David Cronenberg's move and the reason why I care him as a director, and that he can take essentially a lot of Freudian ideas and just make them concrete, make them, you can have anger babies running around killing you. I just, and that's why I find a lot of his later movies more disappointing, because they start with ideas in a way that's, I find kind of sad, and I'd much rather see those animated and sent out to the world to cause trouble.
The Brood has like the whole female body as a point of, I mean, I feel like in the Rabbit and Shivers too, like there's sort of a contagion that the body creates, like the girl in Shivers is sort of the person who had this initially, and the movie kind of puts responsibility on for that a little bit. Even I think it's this doctor who created it, right? I never really paid much attention to the plot, so I think I might. I think I'm right on that. And now we've got our and the Brood, the woman's body just sort of explodes. Anger babies, but I love the Brood too. I don't know, it feels so big, and it feels like, oh God, what's the play about the woman who kills her children? It feels like
Medea.
It feels Medea-esque. It's like big, dark, gendered, disturbing thing that you can read in a lot of ways. Like the more obvious way, like it's his Kramer versus Kramer or whatever. But I also love the character of Nola, and I feel like she's very sympathetic. And I don't know if this was intending that, or if it's just the performance or the kind of material he's working with is so multifaceted it just comes out anyway. I don't know. I never know how a film's getting around its intent, which I think was pretty clear to demonize her, but doesn't totally for me. I just love her.
And I think it's painterly and kind of stately in a way that obviously like Rabbit is not at all.
Oh, it's beautifully, but beautifully like set.
Yeah. It's very visually. It's a step, big step forward. But I still, oh man, it's I just don't with it in the way, and I connect with some of these films strongly, and some of them just I do not have a handle on at all. And the Brood, I think it's beautiful, and I get where you're coming from by seeing Nola. Nola, Nora, you're right though.
Is it?
No, you're right. And she is, she is not the more that he sees her as. I feel like she's pretty righteous. I feel like these are righteous babies.
Yeah.
But,
right babies?
Yeah, righteous fury. Well, and, they're furies. They're connecting it to something classic makes a lot of sense.
It's again part of Cronenberg's charm is that the stateliness of that movie that you already mentioned, and just the beauty of it, and the kind of intense seriousness of it is at complete odds with everything that you're seeing. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of the only directors that could make movie in that tone. You know what I mean? To take the premise of every one of these in the 70s is so utterly ludicrous that you can't imagine anybody ever agreed to make the movie. But he approaches everyone, I think, so seriously, and just like, no, this is a movie about one who produces a little anger baby out of her body and sends them out to kill people, and that's what we're doing here. And whether it's
like sleight of hand, tells you how to feel about them. Even though it's like the plot summary, like you telling us the plot of his experimental movie, we're all just giggling, just listening to you what happens in the movie. But when watching it, he's telling you feel about it. He's telling you this isn't a joke. This isn't silly. This is serious. And I was actually thinking about that when Shivers, about how it would have been so easy for all these 70s movies to be accidentally corny. And none of them are. I mean, I think some are successful than others, but he really avoids a lot of cheesy 70s like filmmaking tricks that make 70s low budget movies seem so cheap and funny when we watch them now. Like unintentionally funny.
Well, it makes me think of like Halloween. The slow long shots, the way that material that seems kind of slight. I mean, that one's way more slight than these ones. It looks so beautiful, and it is about the act of looking at it, like just taking longer than you expect. You're making at things longer than you expect. Things are really moving a little more slowly. I don't know. I think of that scene in Halloween. I'm not pushing directors here, but like Tim Myers has that guy pinned and he just looks at him. You didn't need that. It didn't really. Yeah, it was just sort of like, so that kind of Cronenberg does all the time, I think. It makes us look longer. He's interested in what's happening, it seemed like.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that I think we should maybe throw out and move on to the 80s, and that's, talked about his kind of disinterested and his, I guess, objectivity is the way we should put it. I find that really fascinating, and especially in The Brood, it's probably used to its best effect. I also find it pretty troubling in a lot of ways, and I think just those 3 movies in the 70s in a row contain enough stuff that his silence is almost unsettling. I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, the end of Rabid is some of the most brutal minute I've ever seen. Where they just like, her body's in an alley and they throw it into the garbage.
Oh, God. Yeah, that is really hard to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just, I don't know. And of course, The Brood is fairly obvious, and it's
right.
It's not exactly hidden. But again, in The Brood, I'm not sure whether the misogyny is the writer director or whether it's our characters. I'm not sure who it belongs to, and that's the thing. Rabid is a little harder to explain away, and mostly because I don't think we have a point of view to attach anything to by the end of the movie. Everybody's pretty much dead. But the recurring just horror, the way that we try and read the end of Shivers when all those cars are just coming at the parking lot to go out into the world, whether that's a celebration or the end of times. He's so happy always being objective that I'm not sure I buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I have the 80s. The 80s had a lot of really good stuff. Kind of the films I think Cronenberg is most known for is Videodrome, The Fly.
Scanners.
Scanners, yes. And Scanners was the first one. I'm going to admit, I've seen Scanners 3 times. I love Scanners, but the plot of Scanners, there's people who have telepathic abilities, and there's the government who's using them, and there's other organization, and there's...
Can I actually jump in here and say that this is a problem from the outset, problem from Shivers, as far as I'm concerned. Which there's just there's so much like weird and quickly muttered exposition, and even going forward, there's stuff, and I don't know whether it's because it's not important or is addressed in such a throwaway. I mean, I know you'll probably have had a conversation online about existence, so, but I really struggle with why any of it's there sometimes. Why even bother?
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel about Scanners. Like, I don't know why we need this, because it doesn't seem like he's really interested in it. And this happens throughout the rest of the movies, especially whenever there's some sort of, like, government or like a company that comes in and is doing something, and there's not hinting that it's nefarious, but it never totally makes sense. And so
you're not unscrupulous, like, corporations with very, like, big names.
Exactly. And it feels like it's some sort of solid, like, it feels like it's some solid critique of, like, corporations. Yeah. And yet they have no clue what's happening.
I'll tell you what, so my wife and I were watching Rabid, and we're like an hour into it. And I said, they'll explain it. And we get to the end of the movie, and she just looks at me, because of course they didn't explain. And I'm watching I'm listening to Cronenberg's commentary, and he says, so I'm not sure if this actually made it into the script or not. And they lay out exactly the whole kind of like medical theory that he has about what's happening to her, and I basically says everything. It's like, I don't even know if it was in the script. It matters that little to me.
I mean, I think it doesn't so much about the 70s ones, but Scanners, I do care because it's so heavily there. But anyway, I'll move into Scanners more because I think the big ones. It's about Cameron Vale and Daryl Rev, two great names. A big problem with Scanners is the main act with Cameron Vale is terrible, and Michael Ironside. But like Michael Ironside's like, oh my god, holy shit, so hot, and also you want him to win. That's the summary of Scanners.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, there are some really interesting things coming in. Like Scanners is a little less overtly body horror. I mean, a lot of it's about like things happening. In the end, there's that big moment, and there's the exploding head, which everyone's seen that gift.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Effects. It's just so effective and great. But I mean, to me, Scanners, I don't know how you guys feel about it. Maybe I'll pause and I can't like pay attention enough to watch it as a whole and not be bored at certain points because there's just a lot of running around.
Don't forget about them trying to deprogram him over the phone and him instead setting the blowing up the computers and the gas station over the phone and melting the phone. That was pretty great. There were a lot of moments in night like hitting my boyfriend and be like, he'd never seen it before.
Yeah. No, the parts, I mean, little pieces of it are fantastic.
I agree.
The ending has the whole body switch. Spoiler alert, I guess I should have said that. I never remember to say it first. But the bodies, they're sort of at the end, the switching of body, which again brings in like this idea of, well, can you just put a mind in a different body? I mean, I know movies all the time, but I know Cronenberg's interested in the body. That I'm curious about that piece.
That was quite a jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was quite a jump, and the movie's over.
Right. It kind of like ends in the most interesting part.
Right. So I'm curious if you guys, what do you guys think, Scanners? I feel to me Videodrome is really get heated up.
I both Scanners and Videodrome kind of work. You reach a certain point where the plot just kind of starts to seem irrelevant. But there's so much of it. So much plot. I actually just kind of my love for Scanners is really uncritical. It's a great ride. It operates the same way as Videodrome in that by the time you reach the midpoint, these are the movies that see a connection to like David Lynch in that Cronenberg is a lot more interested in plot. So I actually feel compelled to go, wait, what's happening? As opposed to a David Lynch movie where you're not bothered to ask that question.
Yeah, that's the point. And that's the trick I need, though.
Right.
Well, but he's better.
Yeah, but I think I feel, especially I think in Videodrome, where it does feel at a certain point as if the movie's just kind of folded in on itself, and it's a dreamlike quality where asking those questions is no longer really that relevant anymore. Scanners does a much more action movie kind of mode.
That maybe is why I like it better. Yeah,
I'm not sure whether that mode works as well in an action movie. No, we're just gonna go kind of in the space of this movie now for a while, and car crashes.
Well, I mean, maybe I'll just move on to Videodrome since we've already brought it in. This is a big decade, and I don't want to take up all the time. Like, Videodrome is, I think, a huge movie for him. And I think it also brings in something that is going to carry out is this focus on a specific protagonist, a kind of like having a real clear point of view, eyes through which we see the film.
Sure.
Scanners is not as much that because we're kind of split between Vale and whatever the other guy, Revik, his name, but I think with Videodrome, we're really clearly the eyes of Maxman, which is also a great name, played by James Woods. Videodrome, about a sleazy TV station guy who's looking for some thrilling stuff. There's some humor in the beginning of Videodrome, too, like the TV show.
That's true, some funny parts.
The funny parts. And so there's this this TV station that's supposedly from Russia or something. I can't remember, but it's just basically showing torture and murder, and this goes on to be a sort of infection. Again, Cronenberg's interested in sort of infection, disease, the body.
Yeah.
It all gets really complicated, but there's some great, great scenes. Like, I love the interview between James Woods' character, Max Red, Debbie Harry's character, Nikki Brandt, and Ryan Oblivion, who only appears on Vision. And there's like this, I'm forgetting the name of this big, enormous guy who talks about the medium is the message. Who is that guy? Marshall McLuhan? I feel like there's kind of like that. That's what it's supposed to be. I think I read that somewhere, like sort of a similar figure.
Oh, interesting.
Commenting on the way that we are using film, and there's sets up this sort of question of does violence and sexuality on television or film make us more violent or more sexual in a way we don't want to be? Or is it, as Max Wren said, and Elise, a catharsis? It takes away those bad things. We put them on themselves.
Right.
And that in that scene, and then it brings in a lot of the body horror too, like all this idea of the video technology folding into the body in a way, and also a lot of sort of troubling gender, I think, in this one. The way that Ren's body changes as he is exposed to this video virus or disease or cancer or whatever it is. Yeah, so much. Maybe I'll have you guys jump in with anything you thought was interesting, because it's really, and also just I want to say, it's like, this film is so beautifully made.
It really is.
Yeah, like The Brood, it's got these beautiful pieces that are just like stunning to look at.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and at the same time, they're obviously, I think they're best sort of splattery this decade.
Mm-hmm.
They're really cringy and still really attractive. Like they don't. I mean, they're obviously fake, fantastic, but they're very fleshy and mean.
Yeah.
Really linked to it in a way that I think even, like Redditor is not. This is very, it prefigures The Fly really well.
Yeah, right.
I was just gonna say, let's give a shout out. Let's give a shout out to this era for being the heyday of practical effects.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
It so much.
Better than put this next to The Thing.
Oh my god, so good.
Like that. It's just it's too fun. I just love it.
Yeah.
I was thinking about how Letitia, you were mentioning some of his act Goldblum and Jeremy Irons, and I was just thinking about how James Woods, although I would never think of him in that way, as a lead, he does fit the bill pretty well. He's
sure.
Mm-hmm.
He does kind of have that swagger and kind of an everyman, but God, I hope not.
Well, there is a kind of like sneaky, sunken, but also kind of sexy and a little creepy thing that's going on in the 80s male protagonists. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, Jeff Goldblum, Jeremy Irons, like first crush.
Yeah.
Well,
so Scott Glenn
too.
It's not aesthetic. What are you talking about?
No, it's got like, I feel like there's this very consistent, and even Vigo a little bit in later, but a little too handsome.
Actually, yes, that's a really. I'm noticing that shift. You do go from Woods and Peter Weller and Jeremy Irons to Robert Pattinson and Viggo Mortensen. Also, like a much more objectifying view of men's bodies, like as like sexually defying, I think, which is maybe easier to do with Mortensen than James Woods, but I don't know. He's a little bit fetching in his way.
Yes.
Sure. He also really had a type with his heroines too, which I started to know as I was like just looking through his whole canon. Is he had like they all seem to be sort of, not so much physically, but just like their demeanor is sort of, a lot of them seem sort of wise and sad and
flat affect.
Yeah, a little, and they'll say very strange things with a very flat affect and sort of in a sort of challenging way. Like I feel like Debbie and the woman in Dead Ringers have a very similar similar kind of role, sort of like provoking but not being provoked.
And in Crash, the woman in Crash,
yes,
too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll get to her. We'll get to her.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I don't want to.
Depressive dream girl or something.
Well, but there's not really a girl. I would not give these characters. They're very womanly and very
grown up.
Yes, and that menace in that, in a lot of cases.
Yeah, they're very they resist being controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the 70s in Shivers we get, if you want to go back to humor, I think the woman who's kind of like spends all of her time apparently laying around on her giant rugs.
Goals, right? Oh my god, I want that.
Yeah.
I wanted the whole movie I wanted to hang out with her during the movie. Let's just have the whole movie be about her.
But yeah, I mean, I think that is that cold, disconnected. That's and with all these guys that really want to get something from them.
Yeah.
They're not sure what.
Oh, that's an interesting thing to say.
Well, I mean, I do want to bring in Nikki Brand and ask you guys. So Nikki Brand shows up. She's a psychologist. She's like a radio psychologist.
Yeah.
And she also sort of immediately, there's attraction between her and Max Wren, and immediately she's like burn me, cut me, and he's all, oh, slow down, I just met you. But that's like immediately where she's going, and Jerome is sort of like, she sees it, she's like, yeah, I'm into this. And she wants to go to Pittsburgh, the exotic Pittsburgh, where
like burning yourself a cigarette, yeah.
to really get the full experience, sure.
Yep.
And I mean, she sort of is, as much as the Videodrome is this catalyst into this more extreme viewpoint of the body, and I guess I don't know exactly what she's doing in the film, and by the end she seems to be a fantasy, and it's unclear real and what.
Which is an ongoing theme.
Yeah,
that's definitely something that gets picked up in the bodies and beyond. But to lesser effect, because in this case we have this idea of a sort of point about how it might not be an organic hallucination, and she is a crazy ass character.
And she kind of overshadows him.
Mm-hmm.
She's so provocative and so drawn to. She's so much more drawn to Jerome in a way that he wouldn't have been without her.
Right.
It's much more a commercial thing for him, and for her, and she's just, no, I was born to do this. Like the second she said.
So, Cronenberg will mention anytime he can this movie, kind of prefigures the
right.
And he really he's carving out his Jules Verne space right now.
Sure.
But I think that there's something about like I don't think you could make movie even kind of in this way today, because I think I don't know. Is the whole movie a giant kink shame? Is that what it is?
Right.
Okay, I'm going to say that's a real question that I have with a lot of the way that Cronenberg approaches sexuality, because it seems to be both fascinated and cautionary, and sometimes disgusting.
Yeah. Well, that's how he views everything.
Yeah.
It's like technology.
Yeah.
Fascinating, cool. It's the next step of our evolution, and also it will like make you fucking crazy.
Sure.
And it will, ruin your life and destroy you. Like,
here's what's interesting about that is that when you say that, I just go, yeah. That all sounds perfectly reasonable to me, and all of these things sound like true statements. But I think that what he does is that he can say all of that. While I don't think you can take the aesthetic out of it, that he revels in these images of those breakdowns, and he, he gets on where it and how far down it will you, and so there's. Now I'm kink shaming him, but but I think talking about technology, that idea that he's asked many times that all technology is just an extent, and of course Videodrome has that beautiful image of the hand that turns into a gun, or the gun that he pulls out of his own abdomen, which it's true, but those images are that I imagine a filmmaker waking up in the middle of the day, I have to make this movie because I imagine James Woods Sonic,
or space melting into the TV screen.
Right.
Oh, that's great.
That it's this, it isn't just cautionary kind of like, hey guys, be careful of technology.
Sure.
Hey guys, technology is going to really mess us up, and look at how cool this is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. 100% agree with you, but I also feel more like there's just something about the way that James Woods is, the way that interaction with technology. I'm gonna get in the vagina stomach.
Do it.
He's like, he's feminized in a way. He's made into someone who doesn't have control over things, who is being told what to do. They're just sticking VHSs into him. I don't know. I feel like there's some commentary that's supposed to get, or I can't exactly articulate what bugs me about Videodrome, and I had this trouble when I was watching it. I was trying to write about it in our discussions, and I just can't pinpoint what feels discordant to me. It's not those elements are there. It's not that there's a complex. I don't want to have like a real clear stance on technology or whatever. I don't care about that. There's something about it that feels like he wants his cake and to eat it too, in a bad way. I'm not not clarifying at all. But I don't know. Does anyone else have? I sort of just have this level of, like, irritation with some of this film.
You are actually. I have never watched Cronenberg in this concentration before.
Me neither.
And so to revisit some of
No.
these and to see some things for the first time, I keep developing thesis statements about where he is coming from. And because I come from kind of a feminist background, I'm always to gender these things, and it in very falls apart, which on the one hand I admire. But I think it comes back to, we've talked about the objective eye. We've talked about this, not all of these films have a clear point of view, although that clearly changes with some. Not every film has a reliable narrator. And I feel like there is an aesthetic stability. Like I feel confident in how these things look and how they are, like the visual effects are all always like really telling. But the narrative frameworks are so decentered that there is no character that we're encouraged to sympathize with some notable exceptions. And I think that's true in this one. No character that we are encouraged to trust. And so it's very difficult for me to, if somebody were to ask, like, what's the, and not every film, if you want a message, call Western Union. But if I were, be put on the spot, I would say 80% of what I just watched, there's nothing, there's no clear statement. It would be like, vaginas are sometimes gross, but also really interesting, and they make cool noises. It's very, it's almost childlike. There's an unwillingness to judge or to,
well, there's that curiosity.
Yes.
Sure.
I feel like he's curiosity that's lovely and totally, like, engaging, and even the way he talks about his films, like, there's this clear, like, he's got this weird flat affect and soft voice, and he's so soothing. But it's like there's no, exactly what you're saying, like, there is this, like, baseline curiosity about all these things that are gross and interesting. And I just felt like there was so much more there. I just wanted it to happen and come together.
It's winning, but it's also unpleasant. If that's like, which I guess that's my thesis about most of what I just watched.
Well, one thing that's interesting is that we haven't got The Fly yet, but I feel like The Fly is the movie that makes that work. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It takes is Videodrome a movie about technology or about relationships? Sure. Whereas The Fly, Cronenberg didn't write, correct?
Well, I think he actually wrote the screenplay, but obviously it's based on the earlier, the premise is muddled.
Oh, right.
He write the screenplay?
I think he might have. Hang on, I've got IMDb up here.
It sure does sound like him.
Well,
It really does.
Yeah, we can move on. Well, there's a part, where Goldblum's talking about the flesh or something. The flesh makes you crazy. And I was watching with Zach. He's like, what is with this guy in flesh, man?
I like getting all of our, like, significant others, outsider viewpoints on all these movies. I wish I had made my boyfriend watch more of these Ninja Scanners.
Yeah. Cronenberg is one of the writers on this, but actually no, he's one of two screenwriters with Charles Edward Pogue. And then George Langlin is credited with the short story that I'm sure contributed to the original.
Vincent Price,
Okay.
I guess that's not that important, but although some of my filmmakers do their best work when they do collaborate with somebody who has David Lynch, really feel like that's what, like, The Fly almost remade Videodrome in a very different way. I mean, there is a movie that's about a relationship,
Right.
and it's clear that it's about a relationship, and sure, there's a guy with his parts falling off and everything, and that's all super cool, and it's just as fast to look at as it was in the other, the character great, in actually a kind of a new way, but that center is there, like, that's the movie where he finally finds the narrative center.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing that I think, and we can move on to The Fly because we've got that with films. I think that's the first time, really, for me that the relationship is in any way you're supposed to be interested. Like, in Videodrome, I don't know that we really care. Like, there's literally, I think, one scene where Max Wren and forgot her name immediately are together in reality.
Vicky?
I think it's like
Nikki.
Yeah,
Nikki,
I think
right?
Nikki,
Nikki,
not Vicky.
not Vicky.
And And I mean, we don't hear that much. But in this one, that's the whole
Yeah.
thing. So The Fly, everyone knows what The Fly is about. It was a huge movie in the 80s. I saw it as a kid, and I still remember the arm wrestling scene. I remember from being a little kid and watching it. But, it's about this scientist, very charming, very, very adorable, Jeff Goldblum, as, what's it called? Transporter? Anyway, he's making a device to, like, water. Goes wrong.
Hilarity ensues.
But, like, I mean, this film does have really funny moments, and just so, like, and Gina Davis, they both play each other in this kind of, like, almost like Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. Like, there's this real, like, 30s parent.
Yeah, I love them together.
Feel to it.
She actually seems an exception to not seem like one of his typical female.
That's true. And for me, the difference is like less that. I mean, I think of them as flat. I mean, I think a lot of them are. A lot of the women in Crash, and a lot of them have very flat affect. But she doesn't seem sad in the way that all his.
No.
She's very full of life.
She's not sad, and she has like good boundaries, and she seems to have a sense of like what's healthy and not healthy. And she's like, wow, you're, like, becoming weird. I'm not cool with that. And she leaves. And I could just see that not being how other of the characters would act.
Right.
So she is, like, such a bright light. I love her in
this. Me too.
The body horror is kicked up to, like, disgusting level.
It is, and like, so much more affecting because we're so encouraged to identify. Or, even, like, Seth, he's amazing.
It's tragic. Yeah. Like, this is one of the only movies that you're so invested in the character that it's when things don't work out for them. Like, normally you just watch the same sort of disconnected sort of curiosity when these characters kind of, they spend in, like, even Scanners, you're just like, I don't, you're like, both of you will blow up. That'll be great. Like, let's make with the blowing up. And this one, you're like, it's so sad and so affecting, even as you're like, as it's super gross.
It's this one's much more like, I mean, it's a lot more explicit disease, paranoia, I guess, or infection, or, it's so much like watching somebody die of a disease. It's more a lot more literal, weirdly, for something that's obviously fantastic.
But again, that's what we said in the beginning. That's what I tune in for. Right there. There are only so many filmmakers, I think, that can really walk that line and make, a movie about a guy who turns into a giant fly as affecting as that. I mean, I'm just, again, thinking about the end of The Fly and the death of our protagonist as opposed to the end of Rabid, where we watch her get tossed into the back of a garbage truck,
Right.
We're in completely different worlds. And we're asked to feel completely different things.
But we also don't know that, we know so much about Seth. And I can't even say his last name without saying Brundlefly.
Brundlefly,
But there is a strong point of view here.
Mm-hmm.
And, and at the same time, the same unflinching attention, except this time it's we can't look away from somebody that we know and care about.
Mm-hmm.
And this film brings in something that the 80s has, which is the focus on the masculine, the male protagonist who's going through something. And this one, my husband was noticing this. He said he sounds like some internet jerk. At the moment when he's feeling really good after he's gone through the trip, he's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then when he gets mad, he's like, you're bringing me down. I can do great things. If it wasn't for you. And it's almost like he's all hyped up with the cancer of like being a
toxic masculinity.
Dude. Yeah. Yes, it's literally toxic. But and I also feel like with this one, it could be warning about technology, but it's so not, and I love that. There's no sense that that's any sort of argument being thrown out. It's not, right? I mean, no one would come away from this movie like, wow, we really shouldn't try transporting.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like a value judgment on technology at all.
Not. And sometimes I feel like Cronenberg just throws a bunch of stuff out, and I feel like I don't know
He's like-
always, but this one keeps really focused.
Yes,
Yes.
for sure.
Yes. And yeah, there's no plot point that is that we have to like skim over. Everything it's much more streamlined,
Yeah.
and the explanations are a lot more organic. It's not the two guys sitting in at a desk talking to each other so that there's some fantastic thing we're supposed to believe. It's much more, we have Gina Davis has a reason to be talking about it and receiving that knowledge. It's much more as a screenplay, it seems a lot more tight.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, the 80s I've taken a lot of time.
Oh, there was so much
to
talk about.
I know. There's 2 more films, and I'm going to throw them both out and just see what you guys want to say. The Dead Zone, Stephen King remake. Great book. I think this is a great movie, even though it doesn't have a lot of Cronenberg-y things. It's quiet. It's very sad. It makes me think of The Fly, in that you're really rooting for this relationship. It's really tragic. It's really sweet. But it's also got a few of the sort of lovely. I think they're lovely, sort of gross, lovely things that Cronenberg does. I always think I also saw this as a kid. I don't know why I was watching so much of these when I was a kid. But the scissor death of the guy but it's interesting because like there's this whole serial killer thing in the beginning, which is why the character whose name I can't remember, it's very generic.
Johnny Smith.
Is that
yeah.
what it is? Johnny Smith, right? So he's someone who's been in an accident, is in a coma for 5 years, 6 years, and now has this ability to see when somebody's going to die, how they die when he touches them, I believe. Or, yeah, I think that's what it is. It's really specific. Like, he can't just tell the future in general. It's that's what he can see. And it's a film about someone sort of falling apart, like the other 2 films. But it's a little more like mental. Like, he can't live in the world normally anymore. He can't have the life he was going to have. It's gone. I like how it signals this by Christopher Walken's hair starting really flat and then it's just crazy by the end of the movie. I like this movie. Yeah. But he also, there's little physical things like that limp becomes pronounced, like just that the body is a part of it. And I'm really curious why he didn't choose more body signaling about that decline. But anyway, I think it's lovely. And then Dead Ringers, which is another film that I think is really beautiful and affecting, but also has some super, super problematic things about like gender as well.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to watch. But Jeremy Irons plays gynecologist twins with a
that old chestnut.
Actually, there is a this is based on a true story.
Right. I saw that in the beginning, but I didn't look into it.
It is the only thing I've ever found on it is like an Esquire article or a GQ article or something from the 80s about these very fashionable twin doctors in New York. I mean, it's weird because I always conflate it in my mind with the Collier brothers, the hoarders who. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I think this movie's so beautiful.
It is just really beautiful to look at.
Visual stuff, like the absurdity of their red scrubs.
Oh my God, how terrifying would that be? So good.
I do love it. And and it's so, I guess this is where I started to notice, like, it's those red scrubs that sort of pointed up to me how desaturated so much of what he does is. And I feel like I don't know why that is. I feel like it's something Canadian. But I don't know. And it carries all the way forward.
Yeah, that one in particular is really visually, not monochromatic, but what's the word for when it's all the same value on the color palette? Anyway, yeah, all the like the interiors in that one are so like muted.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it always it always seems that way to me.
Yeah.
I mean, just even moving forward and I was really surprised to see it so often. And I mean, it's one of the things you could look at and say, that's Cronenberg. That's, sure. I think, and I'm focusing on it because that is one of the hooks I can say. I can make a generalization that is generally accurate. And so I kind of cling to it. I wanted to actually just point out about, The Dead Zone, that it's the good adaptation of a Stephen King novel.
Yeah, not many of those.
It's the good and faithful adaptation of a Stephen King novel. And I don't know how or why that worked. What confluence of forces made that happen, but it was delightful to see it happen at least once.
It's such an odd film, too. It seems so sort of lopsided. You don't get the bad politician till the last 30 minutes of the film. You'd think that could be... if I were adapting it, I would be like, cut, cut, cut. That's the story. Mm-hmm. But they don't, and I think that's really why you care at the end about what happens.
Well, and I think it goes really well with Dead Ringers, because essentially you have these people becoming so disconnected from the world around them, and in the case of the Ellie and whatever his name is in Dead Ringers, it's their own insanity, or at least one of their insanities, and in the case of Johnny, it's this gift that is also a disability, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's they're both sad and like you talked about with The Fly, it's this pulling away from the rest of the world and from life, and because you have characters that have actual qualities and sympathetic natures. I don't know. Do you ever find the brothers in Dead Ringer sympathetic? Let me ask you that. Ellie and other guy.
Bev?
Oh yeah, right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I find Dead Ringers, I just watched it again for the first time in years, and it broke my heart.
Mm-hmm.
It really did. And not necessarily in the ways that maybe it was even trying to, but I do find them, whether or not they're sympathetic, I don't know if that's really I know that's the question you were asking, but they're fascinating, and it's one of those places. So we've already talked about how you get to the point 3/4 of the way through a Cronenberg movie, and you're like, you turn to the person next to you and go, "What's happening again?" This is the one where, at the end, spoiler alert, and he's, operating on his brother, and killing him, and I literally was like asking, because I was like, wait, which brother is this?
Yeah.
And it was such a perfect question, it was like, it was so perfectly done that like it essentially didn't matter anymore. There wasn't, there weren't two brothers anymore. And it was like the perfect confluence of all that kind of craziness that he loves to just swim around in. I don't know. And I think that we are right to connect it up to the Dead Zone in that it's doing something similar in terms of its body horror. I mean, obviously the gynecological instruments and things give us plenty of real body horror, but that idea of that other one too with the mind control, that idea that, I don't know, it's kind of a Cartesian thing with, just like that. These characters are minds trapped inside bodies. The difference between Bev and his brother are, absolutely, they're 180 degrees away from each other, and they happen to have essentially identical bodies. And then if we go to the Dead Zone, that through the damaged body we get this new self, and this whole idea of taking people apart, and I don't know, I found it really, really lovely and disturbing.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be as disturbing if we didn't give a shit about them.
Right.
If we didn't, or at least about one of them.
Right.
Yeah. What's interesting to me, I think, is how more interesting the love story is between the brothers than it is between.
Oh, definitely.
Between he and the female lead. That she's kind of beside the point.
Yeah.
Right.
in a almost Cronenbergian way.
Yeah.
Although she does allow Cronenberg to throw in some really problematic gender stuff that, gets us talking. Like the idea that she's not a true woman unless she can have a child. And that if, got 3 wombs but can't have a child, what is she?
Right.
That you can create artwork that is gynecological instruments for operating on mutant women.
Yeah. You know what? This is really a huge tangent, but we talked about how prescient Cronenberg can be, and it now occurs to me, because as we're recording this is just a couple days after the Women's March on Washington, and there was a lot of talk about whether it was exclusionary to trans women and centering womanhood on the vagina was problematic.
Right.
And I'm just like, damn you, David Cronenberg.
She's coming back.
Why? Like, somebody who is actually asking those questions way in advance of even that segment of the population that cares about intersectional feminism. So, snaps, buddy. Sorry, that's
well.
No, that was great.
No, I mean, I think that does bring up that, like, he's got a sort of finger on the pulse of a lot of different things that. I'm gonna put that on the table because there's more to come. In the 90s,